Thanks for joining us at Subject to Change. Lauren and I are here with Jackie, also known as Jay, to learn about her vegan journey. Hello.
Hi.
How are you?
Oops.
Super nervous, but otherwise
Don't
really
be
well.
nervous because it's just a conversation.
Well, it
Yeah,
is.
really.
I was joking with a friend earlier. I'm one of those people that, like, whenever I got assigned a solo and choir, I would like lose feeling in my hands and like lose vision. So it's nothing
Right,
against you guys. I just like spotlights make me nervous.
Rule number 1, we can't ask Jackie to sing. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. When you see the little microphone in the lower right, click on that to learn more. We're so glad you're here.
It's nice to meet you, Jody. I've listened to so many of your guys' podcasts now. So
Yay!
my favorite one was actually just the you two talking together so far. That was lovely. Like a good way of getting to know you two.
I was expecting it to be 2041.
Which is
So
really
that
cool.
I loved their vision, but and that was also like, that was a great one, but it was good listening to you two. Especially, what did I write down? Jody had like one of my favorite quotes in that one, because she was like, it's like you have to, like, I'm such a nerd. Yeah, like if I tilt this won't be on here, but like those are all the books.
Oh, that's great. Wait, I recognize some of them.
Yeah, I'm sure she's gonna talk about them, right?
Yeah, great.
Yeah. But yeah, Jody had said that like it's like we have to encourage people to realize they are part of the world they live in. Why isn't that something they know? And that is like a daily thing where I'm like,
I love your shirt, powered by plants.
Thank you. I noticed your caver guy wore his shirt to his thing. I was like, okay, I'll wear a message shirt.
That's cool. Garbage in, garbage out.
So I'm dying to know how you started down your plant-powered lifestyle.
Yeah,
that's a fun story. Okay. I tried to type this out because it's like there were a couple of different things all happening at the same time. So it started basically in 2018. Although if we go back a bit, when I was pregnant with Quill, instead of having like all of the food, I'm a big foodie, so I expected to have 1,000 food cravings. Yeah. But I started having a lot of meat aversions, which was rare for me because people who know me, but I'll tell you. So anyway, when I met my husband back in SUNY Oswego when we were in college, I was like a total meat and dairy and junk food hobbit. I came from the kind of family that like we didn't eat vegetables unless you consider like ketchup and marinara and potatoes vegetables, which they are, but not like green things were not really things that we ate, and they weren't encouraged. And it was like a couple of weeks after dating Ian that he was like, do you eat green things when I'm like not around? Like, you eat vegetables? I was like, no. And he was like, well, like, I want to grow old with you, and if that's going to happen, like at some point you need to eat some vegetables, because like I've seen what you're eating, and like you're not gonna, like, this isn't the no. So I started kind of eating like minimal vegetables, and be like, if we got chicken wings, I got carrots with them. But like most of my meals were like chicken wings and something that I called a Dorito salad, which was like crushed up Doritos and sharp cheddar cheese. And I loved it. And that was like a meal. And ramen, and like on my diet was atrocious. And like through the years, like through things like Animal Vegetable Miracle, and we started learning about organic, and so we started eating organic meats and thinking that like that was great.
Night cheese.
So like I thought I was an environmentalist, and then around 2018, I was starting to hear more about animal agriculture impacts on the environment. And I kind of didn't want to hear it. Like most of us kind of don't want to hear it. And I was like, but I really like my cheese. Like I likened myself, like Liz Lemon from 30 Rock was my spirit animal. And like there's the thing where she's like, working on my night cheese. And that was all me. I was like, that's what I need.
The Keto Conflict.
Several people at the table had all switched to keto. And my husband was also kind of like about ready to go on that path. And I was sitting there thinking, we're learning that we need to be limiting meat consumption right now. But what I'm hearing from all of my friends and from like family members is like, keto, it's awesome. You can like lose so much weight. Like we got to eat more meat and cheese. And I was like, but we can't do that. Like, we're right now learning that we are like absolutely running to our max of land use and water use. And like, why would we pivot so much to lose weight when we could pivot to actually protect the earth? And it was like actually at that dinner that I decided, like, I don't think I can eat meat anymore. And like, I literally had the conversation with my husband the next morning, and I was like, I need to stop doing this. Like, I'm having a lot of trouble reconciling the fact that we're eating something that we know we shouldn't be.
Jay is a mama bear.
For the next year, I gave up meat, and I actually found myself getting like stronger and healthier than I had been ever, which was rare because I had like a feast of health issues and I've always been a weakling. But the less animal products I was eating, the healthier I felt. But over the course of the year, I was learning more of the environmental, or rather more of the nutritional information. And over that year, our son was actually diagnosed with failure to thrive. And our failure to thrive son was eating only antibiotic, organic, like antibiotic free, like organic, local meats and cheeses. Every meal came with like vegetables. We didn't eat junk food because Ian had gone hard on like because he was keto, it was like, no refined sugars in the house, and like, we're not going to be eating refined grains. And I was like, okay. So Quill was eating what was considered by society to be a very healthy diet, but he was floundering. Like, he was sick all of the time. He was having sinus infections like every month. He had an endoscopy. Like, he had like a new gastroenterologist. They were taking blood draws all the time. And I was freaking out because if anybody knows anything about me, I am a crazy, passionate mama bear. Like, I will.
Good for you.
Like, if you go against my son. So I started doing more research on the nutritional aspect and was learning, well, actually, it could be some of these like meats and cheeses that are causing his issues, like especially all of these sinus infections. So maybe we need to stop. And in like the meantime, he had actually gotten diagnosed with something called eosinophilic esophagitis. And it's one of like our myriad autoimmune disorders, or I'll break it down.
Yeah, say that again, because we're going to have to practice that. Say it again.
Eosinophils are like, it's a blow up of basically like white blood cells. So they can be like, I think eosin, it's like, I think it's like Greek for red or something, but anyway, they can be found in cultures by putting red dye on them. So, and then esophagitis, I mean, like in your esophagus. So what was happening is that he was getting all of this buildup of white blood cells. He wasn't able to absorb the nutrients that he needed to.
Wow.
And he had failure to thrive. And there's like a list of things that you're not supposed to eat if you have eosinophilic esophagitis. And one of them is dairy. One of them is gluten, which they had kept saying like, well, gluten's the issue. Gluten's the issue. Like, just cut out the gluten. The others are like nuts and soy and shellfish. And one of the things that we had learned big time, especially through gastroenterologist book, Dr. Will Bolsewitz, is that our rise of gluten sensitivity is due to microbiome damage from all of the animal products that we're throwing into ourselves, because no other primates on this planet are eating meat and dairy like we are. Actually, no animal on this planet is eating dairy like we are. We're the only animal that is eating another species' milk past infancy.
Really? We should worry about societal contempt?
So I approached his gastroenterologist and was like, well, I think that maybe dairy is also something that we should cut out, not just the gluten. And he was like, well, we're already cutting out gluten, and you don't want him to be like that kid at the party who's not eating the dairy either. It's like, well, I don't care what kid he is at the party. I don't want him to have failure to thrive. So I think maybe this is something that we should check out. So we cut out dairy, and his failure to thrive effing went away, like miraculously. Wow. He sprouted inches. I had also cut out dairy, and I, who had also had sinus infections, also all of the time. I would have been I was one of those people that was like, oh, I have terrible allergies. It's sinus infections all the time. Well, all of that went away as soon as I wasn't eating dairy all the time.
Look to the World Health Organization.
And it's a very quick Google search to find out that the World Health Organization will tell you that over 75% of our entire planet is lactose intolerant, because we're not supposed to still be digesting dairy through infancy. So like, especially in African American and Asian population. And it's one of the reasons why they say that like promoting dairy to children is institutionalized racism, because we're going out and saying like, you guys need to eat like several cups of milk a day, but we're not actually backing that up by science. It's just by industry. history, because America is like, our dietary recommendations are mostly promoted by people like the Dairy Council and the Egg Council and the Beef Council, which have more to do with what they want to sell than what is actually physically good for us.
And also, quite frankly, based in areas of the United States that aren't as diverse. And a lot of the big agri-farms are white America. And never say never. So you've challenged me tremendously because, you know, cheese.
I know.
I think that, in all honesty, I think I could probably give up meat without too much concern. I you know, occasionally I like want to have a sub that has, you know, salami on it, but that could go away. I could make that go away. Chicken, turkey is probably what I eat more of, and I know that that's a problem as well. That would be doable, but harder. Fish, I can't picture myself giving up fish at this point, but I never want to say never, you know? No fish, whimper.
My first request after, because you can't have, like, they tell you can't have raw fish when you're pregnant. So the very first thing that I wanted to eat after I had Quill, like at Krause Hospital, was I had my husband go out and get me some sashimi from like down at the hill. We've overfished our oceans. Like, I know. 90% of them are gone. It's all full with toxins. They're full with PCBs. They're filled with mercury. So it's like, we say never, but then you start thinking about what's in it and it's terrible for you. There's like more cholesterol in it than like a piece of beef. So it's like, it's these things that just kind of like, they started fractaling out in my mind. It was like the more information.
Carcinogenic.
I was a really big bacon and salami fan. You may not know this because I didn't know this, but the World Health Organization classified all processed meats, including bacon, salami, and deli meats, as carcinogens back in 2015.
Yeah, I know. I definitely know that.
Like, in our schools.
I know it. I don't like it, but I know it.
I know, and it's one of those. And pigs, which is like the proponent of that, pigs are smarter than dogs. They're smarter than our 4-year-olds. They sing to their young. They're matriarchal. And our pig farming in North Carolina is so bad that they create more waste than the entire eastern seaboard.
I have heard it's like the most toxic.
And it's minority communities that are all living around that. So like, it's kind of like, it's
where health, carbon, and compassion meet.
And then in 2019, it was in May of 2019 that there was that landmark study published in Nature, which the United Nations also published too, showing that animal agriculture was pushing over 1 million species to extinction.
Yeah.
And that was when I approached my husband. I was like, okay, like, so we have our environmental reasons, we have our health reasons, and we had reasons, and we have compassionate reasons, which seems like they were just tabled to the particular creature that we're consuming. But now we know that what we are consuming is not just hurting the animal that is out there, the sentient, you know, smarter than your dog pig. It's hurting all of these species. It's hurting millions of species across the world. It's the leading cause of biodiversity loss. Like, we owe it to ourselves and our child to start exemplifying how we could actually protect this earth.
I feel like you've just like talked me into starting the process. I'm not going to go full bore. I'm not going full bore starting like dinner, but
no, you start slowly.
Yeah.
Oh. Well, one of the books that you would probably really like is We Are the Weather, and Jonathan Safran Foer, and it says Saving the Planet Begins at Breakfast. It's actually, what is like, you would love these stats. It says, to meet the Paris Accord's 2-degree goal, an individual's annual CO2 budget must not exceed 2.1 metric tons by 2050.
Yep.
Not eating animal products for breakfast and lunch saves 1.3 metric tons per year. And humans, like our Americans right now, we're doing 19.8 metric tons per year because of our meat. France is like 6.6 metric tons.
Things we didn't know.
France has the highest incidences of diabetes in all of the European Union because all they're eating is meat and dairy. And diabetes is perpetuated by having too many fats in your diet because your muscle cells cannot allow the glucose to get through, and you build up insulin resistance. Again, things that I didn't know, but type 2 diabetes is preventable by not eating so many fats.
Look to whole foods, whole nuts, whole grains.
Instead of ground beef, we do lentils. And it seems like they would not be comparable, but like we're going to actually have it tonight. You take cooled lentils and you throw it in the pan with a little bit of oil and taco seasonings, and you sear it up and you put it on your taco, and it tastes just like ground beef.
Yeah.
Because you're topping it with all of the other toppings that you like on a taco. Like we do cashew queso. So instead of cheese, like if you soak cashews for like a day or overnight or whatever, like often like I'll just put them in the night before, and you drain it out, and I have a recipe on my website, but you put in, it's like jalapeno brine, like if you had like pickled peppers, and you put in like that and some nutritional yeast, and you whip it all together in a blender, and it tastes just like queso. And we'll put that on a taco with lentils, and it is amazing. Like I could eat that every day. So we started transitioning to things like that, more whole foods, because that is also what all the doctors are saying, is that like we need more
whole foods
in our diet.
It is a bit about food apartheid.
Yeah, and when you talk about whole foods, I think that's really important too, to realize that this is one of the ridiculous ironies in the world that we've created. Processed foods are cheaper than whole foods, which just makes my brain hurt.
Well, it's actually a myth. It is actually way cheaper. Lentils are like $1.12 a pound.
No, I mean, as far as living in a city, you can't get fresh vegetable. They're, food apartheid. You can't get fresh vegetables. You can't get good beans. You can't get any of that stuff, but you can get a Twinkie for 25 cents, and you can get soda.
Because we're a family of 3 that lives on less than $40,000 a year.
Yeah.
And we do Aldi right down in Nedrow, because we live in South Onondaga, and we do a CSA. But I 100% hear you. Like they'll talk about like, you can go to like the dollar store and it's all of that like total crap that is super cheap. Or our CSA, like we can cover our entire counter from Stone's Throw Farm CSA, and it's about $36 a week for local organic veg. But I agree, it's food apartheid. Not everybody can drive out here and understand it's actually food apartheid, because it's not just that like, oh, you just actually live in a desert. It's no, we've systematically set it up through redlining and otherwise for you to not have access to proper food.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it's true.
Quill, like I have like my whole list of like your heroes, because I know that's one of the questions that you asked. My son was actually what propelled me out of my comfort zone, because as we started learning about this and we started talking about it, Quill was 4 at the time, 3 going on 4. And he was so innocent and sweet. He just wanted to talk to people about it. So he'd see somebody eating like pepperoni pizza, and he would say like, well, do you know that like, it's not actually that good for you, and like it's not good for the earth? And they'd be like, we don't want to talk about this right now, like we don't want to have a debate with you about pizza. And he would feel wounded, and I would as the mom would try to be like, well, Quill, like we shouldn't talk about that, it makes people uncomfortable. And Quill would say to me multiple times, he'd be like, but it's true. And so I started realizing like I cannot be shushing you, like I'm shushing you out of some kind of like societal politeness. But what is the point of societal politeness if I'm supporting ruining the earth that you're going to be inheriting? And so I had to step out of my comfort zone, and that meant that we lost a lot of people that we loved, because it was shocking, the response that we got when we just started trying, and not like mean about it. Like I started off, my website did take a very incendiary tone, and it was because we started off positive, and the positivity was met with drastic hostility. Like I had.
We can each grow forward.
Like, and everybody would be like, well, you're biased. And I'm like, well, biased? I spent 4 years eating that crap. So like, obviously I loved it, but I grew forward. So like, we should all. And I mean, like one of the stats, what did I say? A new study out from the British Medical Journal states that Americans need to drop their animal product consumption by 79% in order to reach international climate goals. You, Jody, said like we shouldn't shit where we live, and it's like we've learned we're shitting where we live, and constantly. So I have a fiery passion to be like, guys, this is why I'm like going out of your comfort zone. My whole Instagram is all about like I won't post a single thing without also tying it back to environmentalism. So if it's a cute picture of my kid, it's also going to be, we have the power every single day to preserve and protect this earth. How are we going to use that power today? We can love it, and we can save it at the same time, and we can save our, grocery bills while doing it, and save an animal and make ourselves healthier. So,
well, that's great. I mean, that's one of the things I struggle with, and you know what? I really appreciate this conversation because I'm challenged by it. So that's really
Yes.
great.
And let's do things by nature's rules.
It's one of those things where the people who think sustainability and environmentalism is all about taking that area of woods and blockading it from human intervention are the people that I don't actually want to talk with. It's not about keeping nature separate because we have to interact with it. We just have to do it by nature's rules.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've opened up a whole different layer of nature's rules that I haven't explored yet.
Some words for change.
I went back to the writing. So I use my Instagram and I use the website to try to just inspire people to make changes in their own homes. I had to take out a savings to take the Cornell Center for Nutrition Studies plant-based nutrition certificate class.
Oh, that's
and
great.
I need to do that for my own edification. I did it specifically so that I could take that information and keep harking it back out to people. I mean, the United Nations, the Mayo Clinic, the American College of Cardiology, they're all saying the exact same thing. But because our industry makes a lot of money selling those Twinkies and those hot dogs, and because even our school district, like I'm on our local board of education, and I couldn't change a single thing about our food, and it breaks my heart.
It's terrifying.
So it was a miraculous thing the other day. I was starving. I just didn't have enough with me, and so I ran down to the vending machines at OCC, and like they had a Kind bar. I'm like, this is probably the closest thing to healthy in here. So.
A klaxon alarm.
Plan going forward is to continue putting more recipes on the website and using Quill for them. There's a lot of recipes on there now, but they're not all put into the folders. I actually had to reshift a lot of the folders because, again, like I said, my website took an incendiary turn once I started getting so many relatives and good friends being like, you need to stop talking and here's why. And I would just get furious because it was all of these people that were telling me to not talk were having heart attacks, getting diagnosed with the type 2 diabetes I was talking about, all of these things. And it was like, you're breaking my heart. Like, I'm trying to help everybody and you're telling me that I should stop talking when like all of this stuff is important. So basically all I'm doing is, Ian calls it a klaxon. A klaxon is that thing that's like a ruga. I'm sounding the klaxon every day. Like I said, I don't make a single post without some kind of, and this is what we can do and this is why.
It might be what, not how much.
But I've always, I won't say struggled with weight, but you know, after I stopped being on a swim team, my weight went up to like the 170 range and it's always kind of stayed there. No matter what I do, even when I reduce food intake, but I haven't really changed my food type. You know, I've reduced intake and counted calories, but I haven't.
Terrible. Yeah, you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
The things I keep saying in here, like we eat so much more food now. Or like our bodies are not meant to have all the cholesterol that we're throwing into it. Our liver produces cholesterol naturally. Because cardiovascular disease is our #1 killer, and plant-based diets are directly tied to preventing and reversing cardiovascular disease, like and diabetes and cancer. Yeah. So anecdotally, we similar. I had depression since childhood. Like since Quill's age, I had depression. I was clinically depressed for years. I had IBS. I had Lyme disease. I was taking ibuprofen every day just to be able to move my neck. Eczema. All of that went away.
You're saying all of the things.
All of that. Like we're on 0 medications over here. Like Ian's cholesterol is like 65. 0 medications on all of us. And again, like we wouldn't have known that. Like I couldn't, and it sounds anecdotal, but you go on, if you start looking through any of the research or you read any of the books and you find that's pretty standard. But
apply some logic.
My logical side is saying, yeah, this all makes sense. Yeah, wow, how can I be a sustainability person and ignore the impact of food choices? And the rest of me is like quivering a little bit.
I have an idea. Jody, let's go on Jay's website. Pick a recipe. Both of us cook the same recipe for our people and then talk about it some more.
That would be great. Let's do that and invite Jay back to hear about the recipe. I like that. That's really cool because I am intrigued by especially the taco with lentils.
Like our big environmental impact things are that animal agriculture is the leading cause of it creates more emissions in the transportation sector, but actually some calculations have it being even more than the energy sector, but it's a complete waste of water. We're drastically, fresh water is our most precious resource and we're losing that in droves. It's the leading cause of deforestation. It's the leading cause of ocean acidification, and 50 to 85% of our oxygen comes from the ocean, which
I know.
Coming from our trees, but the oceanic plankton is doing it, and it's the leading cause of species loss and extinction and suffering. And one of my favorite statistics is that it's 83% of our available land, our agricultural land, is used for animal agriculture, but it only produces 18% of our calories.
Here's a term for you: mammalian growth slurry.
But in one of my other fun statistics we learned is like humans are so focused on protein. Like that's like one of the, the biggest things, like where are you going to get your protein from? Human breast milk is 5% protein. So when we're breastfeeding babies, that's obviously like the most growth that you're ever going to do is when you're a baby. You have to double your weight in your first 5 months. And it's 5% protein is what's human breast milk. Cow milk is 27% protein because it's meant to double a calf and make it a 600-pound mammal. But we keep drinking it in perpetuity and then we wonder why we're getting sick, but you're giving yourself literally a mammalian growth slurry.
Let's hear about Jay's heroes.
You mentioned your son, which is awesome, and how inspiring he is, and that's amazing. Do you have someone else to share with us?
I do. Is it okay if I have a couple? I had to like break it down into like environmental, health, and personal. Like I have a lot of heroes. So environmentally, David Attenborough and Jane Goodall are pioneers to me because not only have they been working on conservation for years, but both of those two souls are advocating for plant-based diets right now. Attenborough is in his 90s and has transitioned to plant-based, and he did Breaking Boundaries, which is a great movie that I recommend, and A Life on Our Planet are both on Netflix. Both of those documentaries clearly show what we're doing to our planet and how we could fix it. So David Attenborough, Jane Goodall. Genesis Butler is a great, she's a child activist in America right now, and she lists herself as Black Indigenous. So she's like, if you want somebody out there who's going to inspire you, and she also posts like pretty much daily. She has something called Youth Climate Save is one of her Instagram handles, and it has endless information about environmental. And Professor Bruce Monger from Cornell actually leads back to, this is what kind of sparked this. In 2019, Quill and I went to the CNY Youth Climate Summit, and it was at Homer High School. And Bruce Munger, at this point, we were still vegetarian. And Bruce Munger did a heartbreaking, mind-opening lecture about ocean acidification and animal agriculture. And it was what propelled us. It was actually what started the very first essay that was on jasquatch.com. And what made me start being like, well, we need to start talking about this, because he's saying that we have until like 2050 before our oceans are ruined beyond repair for eons to come. So what are we going to do about it? And I'm like, what am I going to do about it? I'm going to sound this klaxon all the goddamn day.
Good for you.
I'll be out here sounding it until people want to listen. So those are my environmental heroes. Health-wise, Dr. Kim Williams is the past president of the American College of Cardiology. He's a Black cardiologist. He also runs like the Black cardiologist. There's an association. I forget the proper name of it, but anyway, he works out of Rush University now. He's also out there constantly giving information and trying to inspire people forward. He does outreach in the south side of Chicago. Dr. Yami Cazorla Lancaster is a pediatrician who also has a podcast called Veggie Doctor Radio. And she also has an Instagram, and she's constantly trying to inspire moms and parents out there. I mean, like, here's how we can feed our children. She has a really great book called Intuitive Eating.
Excellent.
It's all about trying to teach families how to feed their children better. Dr. Jackie Bussey is another really inspiring pediatrician who has an Instagram. Dr. Dean Ornish is the cardiologist who basically did enough studies to show that plant-based diets could prevent and reverse massive heart disease.
Okay, is everyone listening? Because this is a whole lot of great heroes to follow.
I know. There's so many. And then there's Dr. Michael Clapper, Dr. Neil Barnard, and Dr. Michael Grieger. And Dr. Michael Grieger has he runs nutritionfacts.org, and it's free videos. There's no ads on there. He's like every money that he gets goes to, he donates back out.
Awesome.
And what I love about all those doctors is that like they could just be making money fixing people somewhere, but all of those doctors are out there promoting information, trying to make you, me, everybody else healthier, and taking times out of their day to do it.
Real healthcare as opposed to what most doctors practice, which is sick care. Yeah.
And then personally, going back again to the like, well, vegan diets or plant-based diets are expensive, which is absolutely not true. My personal hero is my best friend, Crystal. She's a single mom of 3. She still works in the developmental disability sector, and she converted herself and her children and like her niece who lives next door, all plant-based, on her single budget. All those kids are off medications that they were on before.
That's great.
So is Crystal. And anybody who's like, well, it's too hard or like it's going to be too expensive, like you're wrong. It's a myth. A single mom with 3 teenagers can do it on a developmental disability budget. You can too.
You got one convert today. Maybe 2.
I'm definitely looking forward to tackling it a meal at a time and learning.
Yeah,
I think that's really important. So,
and why are we all swinging at branches?
The other question, I think you've probably answered, but I'll let you summarize. If you could stop all of the other noise that happens in the world and have people focus on one collective issue, what issue do you think everyone should be paying attention to?
They need to start transitioning to a plant-based diet as soon as possible, because the individual impact is 73% reduction in your environmental impact.
Amazing.
And that's the United Nations in Oxford saying that, and the IPCC. And there's a great quote that Ian taught me by Henry David Thoreau, and it's that there's 1,000 people swinging at branches to 1 swinging at the roots. That's what I feel about plant-based diets. I worked for the solar industry. I was an energy auditor. I did all sorts of single waste things and wrapped my chicken in all of glass containers. And I was swinging at branches for years. And then I learned the root. And the root betters your health, betters the planet, and spreads compassion. So why not?
Yeah, that multi-solving is really a win in a way that so many things miss being. You've pointed that out beautifully. Thank you.
I have goosebumps. I'm actually excited about this. I feel like this is a good challenge.
Thanks for joining us with Subject to Change.
Hi.
Hi, Lauren.
It's good to see you guys.
You too.
Nice to meet you.
You too. Thank you for inviting Jacqueline on. That was exciting to experience in the background.
Oh, it's great. And you're the heroes of her life, which is awesome.
Yes, we're honored for that.
You can come.
Thank you guys.
Good night.
Thank you. Night.
Have a great night. Bye.